It goes without saying that the ocean is a dangerous place. Being home to rough storms, high waves, and chilling winds, it's no wonder that ships tend to capsize from time to time. However, there are some shipwrecks out there that are a lot more fascinating than the rest. So today, we're going to be counting down the top 10 most famous shipwrecks in the world. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notifications button for the YouTube algorithm. Number 10. The Lusitania. In the early 1900s, it was not planes, but boats that were the primary method of transportation. As such, large vessels were often used to transport passengers across the Atlantic, and the Lusitania was no exception. Being considered one of the fastest and most luxurious liners of its day, this would have been all well and fine had it not been sailing during the midst of World War I. As a result, on May 6th of 1915, when it was just 1,200 kilometers west of Southern Ireland, it was torpedoed and sunk by a German U-boat, which was an action that was expressly forbidden given that the Lusitania was a civilian liner. Killing 1,198 out of the 1,959 passengers on board, many credit this attack for having a role in convincing the United States to join the Triple Entente in World War I. Number 9. The USS Arizona. A ship that is very easily recognized by any World War II enthusiast, the sinking of the USS Arizona was one of the most unfortunate in US history. Docked in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, it was infamously sunk by Japanese bombers on December 7th of 1941 after it was struck in one of its magazines, killing a total of 1,177 officers and crewmen who were on board. A major turning point in the tide of World War II, it was this Japanese attack on American soil, and by extension the sinking of the USS Arizona, that ultimately led to the United States declaring war on the Japanese Empire the very next day. Number 8. The USS Maine. Continuing the trend of wartime shipwrecks is the USS Maine. Now, this vessel had been a relatively new addition to the US fleet when, on February 15th of 1898, it was sunk while docked in Cuba's Havana Harbor. When Spanish and American officials first investigated the scene, it appeared that a fire had occurred in the boiler room, causing an uncalled-for explosion. However, this report didn't stop American newspapers from misconstruing the events, making it seem as if the Spanish had torpedoed or otherwise sunk the vessel. Leading to a political climate that made a peaceful solution untenable, this shipwreck led to the US declaring war on Spain on April 21st of 1898. Number 7. The MS World Discoverer. In short, the MS World Discoverer was a tough ship. That's because throughout its 25 years of service, it primarily was used for cruise routes in some of the harshest conditions on Earth, regularly sailing in places such as Antarctica, the Falkland Islands, the Bering Sea, and the Northwest Passage. However, this illustrious career was ground to a halt when, on April 30th of 2000, the MS World Discoverer hit a rock in an uncharted reef near the Solomon Islands. Causing the ship to list, Captain Cruz had no choice but to bring it to nearby Roderick Bay in order to sink, allowing everyone to safely evacuate in the process. Yet, to this day, the ship still sits in the bay, with this being thanks to the fact that no ship salvaging companies have wanted to acquire it, because all of its valuables were in fact completely ransacked by Solomon Islanders during a civil war. Number 6. The Bismarck. As far as warships go, few in history have been comparable to the Bismarck. Essentially an ocean-bound castle, it was the first full-scale battleship constructed by the German Navy since World War I, and it featured an array of 64 different guns and turrets, along with 4 float planes, Sea-Tac radar, and a double-ended catapult. However, despite being so heavily armed, it was eventually taken down after the Battle of Denmark Strait, on May 27th of 1941, but not in the way you might expect. You see, after being chased and surrounded by multiple British ships, these ships unsuccessfully shot a total of 400 shells and 1 torpedo at the vessel. Now, we say this is unsuccessful because despite there being heavy casualties on board as a result, this effort was not enough to sink the ship. Instead, the Bismarck was scuttled by the crew after it became clear that they could not fight on, and thus, after days of prolonged fighting, the Bismarck finally sank. Number 5. The RMS Republic. Built in 1903 and sunk just 6 years later on January 24th of 1909, the RMS Republic is rumored to be one of the largest untapped treasure troves in the world. Now, the ship met its demise when it collided with the SS Florida off the coast of Nantucket, Massachusetts. And while the SS Florida was relatively unscathed and in fact was able to rescue the RMS Republic's passengers, the RMS Republic itself was not as lucky, as it unceremoniously sunk the next day. Now, the reason why this shipwreck is so famous is because it was not only the largest ship to have ever sunk at the time, but it was also the carrier of a safe full of expensive treasures, with the most notable being a stash of American gold eagles that were worth about $3 million in 1909 dollars. However, given that these would now be worth about $1 billion today, it should come as no surprise that many have tried and failed to find and recover the treasures within this shipwreck. Number 4. The Costa Concordia. While most of the shipwrecks on this list happened decades ago, the Costa Concordia stands apart for being a more modern addition. Now, the Costa Concordia was a cruise ship for Costa Cruise Lines, and it had been sailing near the Isola di Giglio off the coast of the Italian region of Toscana when, on January 13th of 2012, it ran aground and overturned after striking an underwater rock. Killing 32 passengers on board, it was an unmitigated disaster for Costa, costing the cruise line about $2 billion in direct damages, and perhaps billions more due to its loss of reputation as a result. To make matters worse, the whole incident could have been avoided, as the captain and first officer were both later charged with a string of crimes due to their negligence. Regardless, we just hope that such a horrific incident does not reoccur anytime soon. Number 3. The Vasa. While owning a battleship is a pretty big deal, in the year 1628 it had even more glamour than it does today. As a result, when the King of Sweden had the Vasa embark on its maiden voyage on August 10th of that year, he faced massive embarrassment when the ship sank within 20 minutes of it leaving the port. Reportedly capsizing due to strong winds and flooding, it was not until 1961 that the ship was recovered. Yet there is a silver lining to this situation, as nowadays it is a popular Swedish tourist site that has had more than 22 million visitors to date. Number 2. The Nuestra Señora de la Mercedes. Most commonly known as simply the Mercedes, this ship was riddled with controversy both before and after it was sunk. You see, the Mercedes was a cargo frigate owned by the Spanish crown when, in 1804, it was approached by an English convoy. Said convoy ordered the Spanish ship to sail to a British port. However, due to the two countries being at peace at the time, this request was rightfully rejected. This led to the British firing on the ship, sinking it just south of Cape Santa Maria in Portugal. Now, for years, the ship remained untouched. Yet this changed when, in 2007, the company Odyssey Marine Exploration reported to have found a very rich shipwreck at an undisclosed location. And although the company tried to hide the bounty at first, it turned out that the ship in question had been the Mercedes, and that along with the ship, the company had found a 14.5-ton cache consisting of 500,000 gold and silver coins. However, the Spanish government was not all too happy with this plundering, and ended up suing Odyssey, claiming that because the Mercedes had been a Spanish ship, that therefore the Spanish government had the rights to the coins. Eventually winning the case in the US Supreme Court, the coins were then returned to the Spanish government in December of 2012. Number 1. The Titanic. No list of sunken ships could be complete without mention of the Titanic. Departing from Southampton, England on April 10th of 1912, it was the largest ship in the world, and at the time, many claimed that its airtight compartments made it unsinkable. This caused the Titanic's owners, White Star Line, to not put enough lifeboats on the ship in order to accommodate everyone on board, and with hindsight, we know that this ultimately ended up biting them in the butt. That's because on April 14th of 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg while just south of Newfoundland, Canada, causing the entire ship to sink. More than 1,500 passengers ended up meeting their demise. Leading to widespread publicity, this shipwreck caused boating regulations to become much more strict, and since then the Titanic has easily become the most famous shipwreck in the world. That's all we have for you today, everyone, and thank you all for watching. Let us know in the comments down below which shipwreck you thought was the most fascinating. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notifications button so that you never miss out on another Variety Top video. Until next time.